"You don't belong in the Moon Hall, Emily." The words followed Emily Carter across the polished marble floor as surely as the soft laughter behind them. But she kept walking, balancing a silver tray with both hands while hundreds of guests gathered beneath the enormous glass ceiling of Blackwood Palace. Above them, the full moon washed the hall in pale light, turning every crystal chandelier into a field of frozen stars. Emily had spent most of her 24 years learning how to disappear. As an Omega without a powerful family, without status, and without the graceful confidence expected at royal gatherings, being unnoticed had become almost a skill. Tonight, however, disappearing was harder. Tonight was the choosing ceremony, and Alpha King Nathaniel Blackwood had returned after 3 years away from the capital. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in courage and destiny, hit like and subscribe. These stories remind us, love finds the broken. Now back to Emily. She lowered her eyes and continued toward the servants' table, ignoring the whispers drifting behind her. "Why did they even let an Omega like her inside?" someone murmured. Emily pretended not to hear. She had promised herself she would survive the evening quietly, finish her work, collect her pay, and return to the little cottage nearly 6 miles beyond the palace gates before midnight. Nothing more. Then the great doors opened. Conversation vanished almost instantly. Nathaniel Blackwood entered without announcement. He didn't need one. Tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in a simple black formal coat rather than ceremonial gold, he carried the kind of authority that made even powerful alphas straighten instinctively. Emily had heard the stories. The king who never smiled. The king who had rejected every political match offered to him. The king whose wolf supposedly recognized lies before humans could speak them. She expected him to look toward the noble women waiting beneath the moonlit balcony. He didn't. His silver-gray eyes moved across the hall slowly, almost absently, until a young servant beside Emily stumbled. "Hey!" Crystal glass tipped from the tray. Emily caught it before it struck the floor, but the sudden movement sent her own tray tilting. She steadied it with a breath. A few guests laughed anyway. Heat climbed into her cheeks. "Careful," a noblewoman said with a smile that held no kindness. "Some things are too valuable for certain hands." Emily looked at the glass, then quietly placed it back onto the tray. "Then perhaps valuable things should be handled with kindness," she replied. Silence spread around her. Emily immediately wished she could take the words back. She turned toward the servants' corridor, hoping to disappear before anyone decided an Omega had spoken above her station. Then she felt it. A strange warmth moved through the room, gentle but unmistakable, like sunlight reaching through winter clouds. Her steps stopped. Somewhere behind her, a chair scraped softly against marble. Emily turned. Across nearly 40 feet of stunned guests, the Alpha King was standing perfectly still. He wasn't looking at the nobles. He wasn't looking at the council. He was looking directly at her. And for the first time that night, Emily forgot how to disappear. Emily could hear her own heartbeat in the silence. For one impossible second, she wondered whether Nathaniel Blackwood was actually looking past her, perhaps toward some noble woman standing near the servants' corridor. She shifted half a step to the side. His gaze followed. That was worse. Around her, whispers began moving through the moon hall like wind through dry leaves. Emily lowered her eyes and tightened her fingers around the silver tray. She had spent years learning the rules that kept an Omega safe in rooms filled with powerful wolves. Do not attract attention. Do not challenge anyone. Never mistake curiosity for kindness. Yet the Alpha King had risen from his chair because of her, and every instinct told her something had changed. "Emily." The palace steward appeared beside her, his expression strained. "Return to the service corridor." Relief came so quickly that her knees almost weakened. "Yes, sir." She turned at once. 3 steps. 4. She had nearly reached the archway when a calm voice crossed the 40 feet between them. "Wait." Emily stopped. So did everyone else. Nathaniel descended the shallow steps from the royal platform without hurry. The nobles nearest him moved aside before he reached them. Emily kept her attention on the tray because looking at him somehow felt more dangerous than facing the entire room. His footsteps stopped several feet away. "What is your name?" he asked. She swallowed. "Emily Carter, Your Majesty." "Look at me, Emily Carter." There was authority in his voice, but no cruelty. Slowly, she raised her eyes. Up close, he looked different from the stories. Still formidable, certainly, but tired around the eyes, as though 3 years away had given him burdens no crown could hide. His silver-gray gaze settled on her face with an expression she could not understand. Have we met before? No, Your Majesty. Something flickered across his features. Confusion, perhaps. Behind him, a woman in an ivory gown stepped forward. Lady Victoria Hale, daughter of one of the richest alpha families in the Northern Territories, had spent the evening surrounded by people certain she would become queen. Nathaniel, Victoria said softly, the ceremony is waiting. His attention remained on Emily. I know. Emily wished the marble floor would open into some quiet passage leading anywhere else. Then she noticed an elderly server struggling with a heavy pitcher near the banquet table. Without thinking, she set down her tray, crossed the few feet between them, and took the pitcher gently from his trembling hands. I have it, Mr. Dawson. You are supposed to be standing before the king, he whispered, and you are supposed to be resting that wrist. She gave him a small smile and placed the pitcher safely on the table. When Emily turned back, Nathaniel was watching her even more carefully. Not her dress, not her rank, not the embarrassment everyone expected her to feel. He had noticed the one thing nobody in that hall considered important: kindness when no reward was waiting. The royal advisor leaned close to Nathaniel and murmured, Your Majesty, the candidates are ready. Nathaniel finally looked toward the moonlit platform where 12 noble women waited beneath the ceremonial banners. Then his gaze returned to Emily. Let them wait. A stunned murmur swept through the hall. Emily's breath caught. Nathaniel took one measured step closer, stopping at a respectful distance. Something strange stirred inside her chest again, warm and quiet, answering a presence she could neither see nor explain. Nathaniel seemed to feel it too. His expression changed. The guarded king disappeared for the briefest moment, leaving only a man confronting something he had searched years to find. Emily, he said quietly, why can I hear my wolf saying your name? Emily forgot the hundreds of people surrounding them. The music had stopped. The servants had stopped moving. Even the flames in the chandeliers seemed strangely still beneath the silver moonlight. Your wolf? She whispered. Nathaniel studied her, as though he expected the answer to be hidden somewhere in her expression. He has been silent for 3 years. A murmur passed through the hall. Emily knew enough about royal wolves to understand what that meant. An alpha king's wolf was not merely instinct. It was strength, identity, and the ancient bond connecting a ruler to his people. Nathaniel glanced toward the watching nobles, and whatever vulnerability Emily had seen disappeared behind the calm authority of a king. Continue the ceremony, he told the royal advisor. The man blinked. Your Majesty? Without me. That created another wave of whispers. Lady Victoria's composed smile finally faltered. Nathaniel, 12 families traveled hundreds of miles for tonight. Then they deserve food, music, and hospitality, he replied evenly. They do not deserve a king pretending destiny can be scheduled. Emily felt every gaze return to her. She stepped backward. Your Majesty, I should return to work. You may. The answer surprised her. No command to stay. No public declaration. No demand that she explain something she did not understand herself. Nathaniel simply moved aside and gave her a clear path toward the corridor. Thank you, she whispered. Emily collected her tray and walked away, forcing herself not to hurry. Only after the heavy service door closed behind her did she release the breath trapped in her chest. The corridor beyond was cooler and quiet, lit by small wall lamps instead of chandeliers. She leaned against the stone for one moment. What did you do? Emily opened her eyes. Victoria stood at the far end of the corridor. Somehow she had followed without Emily noticing. Her ivory gown seemed almost luminous against the dark walls. I did not do anything. The king ignored the choosing ceremony because he looked at you. Victoria approached, stopping several feet away. Her voice remained controlled, but embarrassment sharpened every word. Do you understand what people will say? Emily lowered the tray onto a side table. They already say enough about me. Then give them no reason to say more. Emily almost agreed. That was what she had always done. Stay quiet. Stay small. Make other people comfortable. But she remembered the fallen glass and the laughter. She remembered Nathaniel allowing her to leave instead of treating her like something he had discovered and therefore owned. I cannot control where the king looks, Emily said softly. Victoria stared at her, apparently unprepared for an answer that was neither apology nor defiance. You should remember your place. Emily met her eyes. Her hands trembled, but her voice did not. I remember it every day. Footsteps sounded beyond the door. Victoria immediately stepped away. The service door opened, and Nathaniel entered alone. His expression tightened when he saw Victoria, then softened when his gaze found Emily. Lady Hale, the ceremony requires your presence. Victoria hesitated before offering a graceful nod and leaving. Nathaniel waited until her footsteps disappeared. I apologize, he said. Emily stared at him. Kings were not supposed to apologize to omegas. For what? For turning a quiet evening into something you did not choose. That answer unsettled her more than any royal command could have. Nathaniel reached inside his coat and removed a small silver medallion engraved with a crescent moon. The moment Emily saw it, warmth flashed through her chest. She gasped. The medallion answered with a faint silver glow. Nathaniel went perfectly still. That is impossible. Emily looked from the medallion to his face. What is it? His voice dropped almost to a whisper. Something my mother gave me before she died. She told me it would only awaken near the person the moon had chosen. Emily shook her head and stepped back. You have the wrong person. Nathaniel did not follow her. He only watched the silver light grow brighter between them. For 3 years, he said quietly, I hoped I did. Emily stared at the silver medallion until its glow softened against Nathaniel's palm, but the warmth inside her chest did not disappear. It frightened her because it felt familiar, like recognizing a song she had never heard before. My mother used to talk about signs from the moon, Emily said carefully. I stopped believing those stories a long time ago. Nathaniel closed his fingers around the medallion. Why? Emily looked toward the service door. Beyond it waited a hall filled with people who measured worth by bloodline, rank, and strength. Because signs never changed anything for people like me. Nathaniel's expression grew quiet. People like you? Omegas who are useful when someone needs a table cleared, but embarrassing when someone notices them. She immediately regretted the bitterness in her voice, yet Nathaniel did not correct her. How long have you worked here? 6 months. And nobody told me? Emily almost laughed. Would the king normally receive reports about kitchen assistants? For the first time, something close to amusement touched his eyes. Apparently he should. The warmth in her chest deepened, and Emily hated how easily that small expression made him seem less distant. Then voices approached from the moon hall. Nathaniel slipped the medallion into his coat. The royal advisor entered with 2 council members behind him. Your Majesty, we need you immediately. The guests are demanding an explanation. His gaze moved toward Emily. The kindness vanished from his expression. And she cannot remain here. Emily recognized that look. She had seen versions of it her entire life. Not hatred. Something quieter. The certainty that she was less important. Nathaniel noticed too. Her name is Emily Carter. The advisor stiffened. Of course. Miss Carter should return to the servants' quarters while the council determines what happened. Nothing happened that requires your permission, Nathaniel replied. His voice never rose. Somehow that made the corridor feel even quieter. Emily touched the edge of the table. She did not want another confrontation created in her name. I would rather leave, Your Majesty. Nathaniel looked at her. Leave the corridor? The palace. Surprise crossed his face. My shift is almost finished. I can walk home. At this hour? I have done it before. Nathaniel glanced toward a narrow window. Beyond the glass, clouds were gathering over the forest, hiding pieces of the moon. Your cottage is how far? Almost 6 miles. Then a carriage will take you. The advisor opened his mouth, but Nathaniel silenced him with one look. Emily shook her head. I do not need royal treatment. A safe ride home is not royal treatment. His answer was gentle. It is basic consideration. The simplicity of those words caught her off guard. Nobody had ever spoken about her safety as though it were obvious. Nathaniel turned toward the advisor. Have a carriage prepared. Then he faced Emily again. I will not ask you to believe in the medallion tonight. I will not ask you to believe me either. Emily searched his face. Then what are you asking? Nothing. That single word landed harder than a command. Whatever this is, you deserve the choice to walk away from it. Minutes later, Emily crossed the palace courtyard beneath a darkening sky. A black carriage waited near the gate. She had almost reached it when she heard hurried footsteps behind her. Mr. Dawson emerged carrying her forgotten shawl. Emily, wait. She smiled and accepted it. Thank you. His eyes dropped to her wrist. The smile disappeared from his face. Where did you get that mark? Emily followed his stare. Beneath her skin, just above her pulse, a faint silver crescent had appeared. She had never seen it before. And somewhere inside the palace, a wolf howled for the first time in 3 years. The howl rolled across the palace grounds and into the forest, deep enough to make Emily feel it beneath her ribs. Mr. Dawson turned toward the palace windows. Lights were appearing one after another as guests rushed toward the balconies. Emily barely noticed. Her attention remained fixed on the silver crescent glowing faintly above her pulse. What does it mean? She asked. Mr. Dawson looked suddenly older. I have only seen that symbol once. Where? His eyes lifted to hers. On Queen Eleanor, Nathaniel's mother. Emily pulled her sleeve over the mark. That cannot be right. Before Mr. Dawson could answer, the palace doors opened. Nathaniel crossed the courtyard quickly, followed by his advisor and several stunned council members. He stopped about 10 feet from Emily. Something about him had changed. The controlled distance she had seen in the moon hall was gone. His breathing was uneven, and wonder had replaced the guarded expression in his silver-gray eyes. You heard him, Nathaniel said. Emily nodded. You're Wolf. For the first time since my mother died. The courtyard fell silent. Nathaniel took one step toward her, then stopped, as though remembering his promise not to take away her choice. Emily appreciated that more than she wanted to admit. Mr. Dawson says this mark belonged to your mother. Nathaniel looked toward her covered wrist. May I see it? Emily hesitated before pulling back her sleeve. Moonlight touched the crescent. The mark brightened. At the same instant, the medallion beneath Nathaniel's coat shone through the dark fabric. Several council members gasped. The royal advisor whispered, the lunar seal. Nathaniel removed the medallion slowly. Its silver surface now carried the same crescent visible on Emily's wrist. Explain, Emily said. The advisor looked uncomfortable. Nathaniel answered instead. The royal family has kept an old tradition for generations. The seal does not choose rank. It does not choose wealth. According to the records, it responds to a bond built around character rather than status. Emily looked toward the palace, where silhouettes crowded the tall windows. And everyone in there knows this. They know the legend. Then tomorrow they will decide I somehow cheated a legend. Nathaniel's jaw tightened. Because he knew she was right. A councilwoman stepped forward. There is a way to remove doubt. The Hall of Records contains the original Moon Covenant. If the seal is genuine, the covenant will respond to Miss Carter. The advisor frowned. Opening the hall during a choosing ceremony would be unprecedented. So is the King's Wolf returning after 3 years, the councilwoman replied. Emily felt the attention gathering around her again. She had wanted to go home. She had wanted tea, silence, and the familiar creak of her cottage floorboards. Instead, strangers were discussing her future as though she were evidence in an argument. No, she said. Everyone looked at her. Emily's voice trembled, but she continued. If there is a test, I decide whether I take it. Nathaniel's expression softened immediately. Yes. The advisor stared at him. Your Majesty, the kingdom needs certainty. And Emily needs dignity. Nathaniel turned to her. The hall will remain closed unless you choose otherwise. Emily looked at the crescent on her wrist. All her life, people had decided what an Omega should accept, where she should stand, how quietly she should speak. Perhaps walking away would finally be choosing for herself. But perhaps staying could be, too. She lifted her chin. Open the hall. 20 minutes later, the ancient doors beneath Blackwood Palace swung inward. Emily entered beside Nathaniel, with the council following several feet behind. At the center of the chamber stood a stone pedestal untouched for generations. Resting upon it was a silver book. Emily approached. Nothing happened. The advisor exhaled with visible relief. Then Emily placed one hand above the cover. The entire chamber filled with silver light, and words appeared across the ancient page. Nathaniel stared at them. Emily could not understand the old language, but everyone behind her could. One by one, the council members lowered their heads. What does it say? Emily whispered. Nathaniel looked at her, and his voice carried something deeper than surprise. It says the moon did not bring you here to be chosen, Emily. It brought you here to choose. Emily looked down at the silver book, certain she had misunderstood. Choose what? She asked. Nathaniel did not answer immediately. The councilwoman stepped closer to the pedestal, careful not to touch it. The old covenant predates the choosing ceremony by centuries. In those days, a true bond was never a king selecting someone beneath him. Both souls had to choose freely. Emily glanced at the council members. Some looked astonished. Others looked deeply uncomfortable. Then why did that change? She asked. Silence answered first. Nathaniel's advisor finally spoke. Tradition became politics. Noble families wanted certainty. Alliances became more important than the original meaning. Emily almost smiled, though there was nothing amusing about it. So everyone remembered the ceremony and forgot the choice. Nathaniel's eyes remained on her. Apparently so. The silver words across the page brightened again. Emily felt warmth move through her wrist, but this time she did not pull her sleeve down. She had hidden enough tonight. What happens now? The councilwoman looked toward Nathaniel. According to the covenant, Emily must be presented before the gathered houses. She may accept the bond, refuse it, or request time. No one, including the king, may influence her decision. Nathaniel nodded once. Then that is what will happen. His advisor stepped forward. Your Majesty, consider what refusal would mean publicly. Nathaniel turned. It would mean she refused me. The simplicity of his answer startled everyone. And the throne will still be here tomorrow. Emily studied him. Powerful men had surrounded her all her life, but power usually announced itself by demanding obedience. Nathaniel seemed strongest when he refused to demand anything. They returned upstairs together. By the time the doors of the Moon Hall opened, every guest had heard some version of what happened below. Conversations died as Emily entered. She could feel judgment moving across the room before anyone spoke. Victoria stood near the ceremonial platform, pale but composed. Her father leaned close to her and whispered something. Victoria looked at Emily, then unexpectedly stepped away from him. Nathaniel stopped at the center of the hall. The choosing ceremony is concluded. Confusion spread instantly. The royal advisor raised the ancient silver book so everyone could see it. Nathaniel continued. Tonight we discovered that a tradition meant to honor destiny became something else. For generations, women have stood here waiting to learn whether a king considered them worthy. Emily saw several noble women exchange glances. That ends tonight. Nathaniel turned toward her. Hundreds of eyes followed. Emily's pulse raced. Emily Carter, he said, the covenant recognizes a possible bond between us. But recognition is not ownership. You owe me no answer because of my crown, my wolf, or that mark. Someone near the front whispered, she is only an omega. Nathaniel heard it. So did Emily. Before he could respond, Emily stepped forward. Yes, she said. Her voice carried farther than she expected. I am an omega. The room became still. I serve meals. I carry trays. I live in a cottage 6 miles from this palace. None of that makes my answer worth less. Nathaniel's expression changed with unmistakable pride. Emily looked at him. And my answer is that I do not know you. Several guests gasped. Nathaniel remained perfectly calm. That is fair. Emily took another breath. But I would like the chance to. For the first time that evening, Nathaniel smiled. Not the practiced smile of a king before his court, but something warm and almost relieved. Then the silver crescent on Emily's wrist glowed again. Across the hall, every candle flame turned silver. The ancient book opened by itself, its pages moving until they stopped on a single forgotten passage. The councilwoman read the words and went pale. Your Majesty, she whispered. There is more. Nathaniel looked toward her. What does it say? She lifted her eyes to Emily. The woman bearing this mark is not merely permitted to choose the king. According to the oldest law of Blackwood, she is the only person who can awaken what has been sleeping beneath this kingdom for 300 years. The Moon Hall remained silent long after the councilwoman finished speaking. Emily could feel hundreds of eyes searching her for some visible sign of greatness, and their confusion almost made her laugh. She was still wearing the same simple gray dress. Her hands still carried faint marks from hours of polishing silver and lifting serving trays. Nothing about her had changed except the way the room was looking at her. What has been sleeping? Nathaniel asked. The councilwoman turned several fragile pages. The Heart of Blackwood. Nathaniel's expression hardened with recognition. That is a children's legend. So was the lunar seal until 20 minutes ago. A nervous murmur traveled through the nobles. The councilwoman continued. The records say the heart was an ancient source of unity among the packs. It did not make rulers stronger. It allowed them to understand the people they governed. 300 years ago, it went silent when the royal houses began choosing power over true bonds. Emily stared at the glowing crescent on her wrist. And everyone thinks I can awaken it. The covenant says the bearer of the crescent can open the moon chamber. Nathaniel immediately shook his head. Not tonight. His advisor blinked. Your Majesty, if this is real, we cannot delay. We can if Emily wants to. Again, he gave the decision back to her. Emily looked around the hall. Some faces held wonder. Others held suspicion. Then she noticed Mr. Dawson standing near the servants' entrance, still favoring his tired wrist. Beside him were kitchen workers, attendants, stable hands, and young Omegas who had spent the entire evening becoming invisible whenever nobility passed. They were watching her differently now, not because she might become important, because someone like them had finally been asked what she wanted. Emily turned to Nathaniel. Where is this chamber? Below the eastern tower. How far? About a quarter-mile through the lower palace. She nodded. Then I want to see it. Nathaniel did not smile. He simply offered his hand, palm upward, leaving several inches between them. Emily understood the question. She placed her hand in his. Warmth moved through her fingers, gentle and steady. The silver candles brightened. Together they crossed the hall, but before they reached the doors, Victoria stepped into their path. Emily felt Nathaniel's hand tense slightly. Victoria looked first at him, then at Emily. My father wants me to challenge the covenant. Emily waited. Victoria swallowed. I will not. Her father rose abruptly from his seat. Victoria. She ignored him. I spent my entire life preparing to be chosen by a king, Victoria said quietly. No one ever asked whether I wanted the man beneath the crown. Her eyes softened. Maybe this tradition needed to end. Emily squeezed her hand once before continuing. 20 minutes later, they reached the eastern tower. The moon chamber door was enormous, carved from pale stone without hinges or handles. A single crescent rested at its center. Nathaniel stood beside Emily while the council gathered several feet behind them. You can still walk away, he said. Emily looked at him. So can you. Something warm passed through his eyes. Then we stay because we choose to. Emily raised her marked wrist toward the stone. The crescent answered with silver light. A low hum filled the corridor. Slowly, the ancient door opened. Beyond it was not treasure, weapons, or a throne. It was a circular room containing thousands of names carved into the walls, names of Omegas, Betas, servants, healers, farmers, and forgotten families. Emily stepped inside, overwhelmed by the quiet dignity of them. Then she saw one name glowing brighter than all the others. Carter. Her breath stopped. Beneath the family name, new words appeared in silver. Nathaniel moved beside her and read them aloud. The heart awakens not for royal blood, but for the one who remembers that every voice has worth. The floor beneath Emily's feet began to glow, and far beyond the palace walls, bells that had remained silent for 3 centuries began ringing across the kingdom. The bells did not sound like an alarm. They sounded like recognition. One after another, their clear notes traveled beyond Blackwood Palace, across the sleeping capital, and into the distant valleys where generations had forgotten what those ancient towers were built to announce. Emily stood at the center of the moon chamber, unable to move. Silver light flowed beneath her feet in delicate lines, spreading outward until every name carved into the circular walls began to glow. Thousands of forgotten people surrounded her in light. Nathaniel slowly turned, reading names that royal histories had reduced to footnotes or erased completely. They were part of the covenant, Emily whispered. The councilwoman nodded. All of them. The kingdom was never founded by alphas alone. Nathaniel looked toward his advisor. Why was this hidden? The man lowered his eyes. I do not know, Your Majesty. Then we find out. His voice carried no anger, only certainty. Emily walked toward the Carter name. When her fingertips touched the stone beneath it, another line appeared. Eleanor Carter, Keeper of the Heart. Emily stopped breathing for a moment. That was my grandmother's name. Nathaniel stepped closer, but did not touch her. You knew her? She raised me until I was 12. Emily remembered warm bread cooling beside a kitchen window, stories beneath old quilts, and a woman who always told her that gentleness was not the opposite of strength. After Eleanor died, Those words had become memories Emily protected quietly because the world seemed determined to prove them wrong. She never told me about this. Maybe she wanted you to choose your life before anyone told you what you were supposed to become, Nathaniel said. Emily looked at him. Somehow he understood exactly why that mattered. Footsteps approached from the corridor. Victoria entered with Mr. Dawson and several palace workers behind her. The council advisor immediately frowned. This chamber is restricted. Nathaniel turned toward him. Not anymore. He looked around at the illuminated names. If this place honors the people the palace forgot, then those people will not be kept outside its door. Mr. Dawson stepped inside cautiously. His eyes filled with wonder when a section of the wall brightened near him. Dawson. He covered his mouth with one trembling hand. Emily smiled. Something inside the chamber shifted. The silver light grew warmer as more servants entered. Then nobles followed. Omegas, betas, and alphas stood together without ceremonial order, each searching the walls for names belonging to families they had never known were part of the kingdom's beginning. The heart had not awakened because Emily possessed hidden power. It awakened because the doors were open again. Nathaniel seemed to realize it at the same moment. That is the secret, he said. Emily nodded. It was never waiting for one important person. She looked around the chamber. It was waiting for everyone to matter again. Nathaniel's gaze held hers, quiet and deeply moved. When they returned to the Moon Hall near midnight, no one laughed at Emily's gray dress. No one ordered her toward the servants' corridor. Yet she noticed something more important than their changed expressions. Nathaniel did not lead her toward the royal platform. Instead, he stopped beside her on the same marble floor where she had stood carrying a tray hours earlier. Emily Carter, he said before the gathered hall. Tonight, everyone expected me to choose a queen. Emily's heart beat faster. But an old covenant reminded me that love without freedom is only another kind of duty. He removed the royal medallion and closed his hand around it. So I will make no claim upon you. Surprise moved through the room. Nathaniel looked only at Emily. I asked for something smaller. Tomorrow morning, when there are no ceremonies and no audience, will you walk with me through the palace gardens and let me introduce myself as Nathaniel? Emily felt tears warm her eyes, but she smiled. Yes. The king smiled back. Then, before anyone could bow to him, Nathaniel turned toward the servants gathered near the doors and bowed his head first. Morning arrived quietly over Blackwood Palace. Emily stood beneath an archway in the eastern garden, watching sunlight replace the silver moonlight that had changed everything only hours earlier. She had slept very little, yet for once exhaustion did not feel heavy. The palace seemed different in daylight. Without chandeliers, ceremonial banners, and hundreds of watching faces, it was simply an old stone home surrounded by maple trees, roses, and winding paths still wet with morning dew. I was hoping you would come. Emily turned. Nathaniel approached without guards, without his formal coat, and without the silver medallion displayed around his neck. He wore a simple dark shirt and carried 2 cups of coffee. Emily smiled. Is this how an alpha king normally welcomes guests? I have no idea. I have never invited someone for a morning walk before. He offered her 1 cup. Mr. Dawson said you take cream and 1 spoonful of sugar. Emily accepted it. You asked Mr. Dawson? I am trying to introduce myself as Nathaniel. Nathaniel apparently needs help. She laughed, and the sound surprised both of them. They began walking beneath the trees. For nearly an hour, they spoke about ordinary things. Nathaniel told her he hated formal dinners, preferred old history books, and had spent 3 years traveling through distant packs because his wolf silence had convinced him something inside the kingdom was wrong. Emily told him about her cottage, her grandmother Eleanor, and the small herb garden she struggled to keep alive every summer. He never interrupted. More importantly, he never treated her answers as insignificant. When they reached a stone bridge overlooking a narrow creek, Nathaniel stopped. The council met before sunrise. Emily's smile faded slightly. That sounds less peaceful. It was. He looked toward the water. The choosing ceremony has been abolished. Emily stared at him. Already. The covenant was clear. I should have been clear sooner. He continued before she could answer. The moon chamber will also be open to historians and representatives from every pack. Not only noble houses. Servants, healers, farmers, omegas, betas, everyone. Emily felt warmth beneath the crescent on her wrist, But there was no blinding light this time, only a gentle reminder. "And what happens to me?" she asked. Nathaniel met her eyes. "Whatever you choose." Months passed. Emily did not become queen overnight. She did something that surprised the entire kingdom instead. She returned to work, not because anyone required it, but because she refused to let destiny erase the woman she had been before the Moon Hall noticed her. She helped create a council where ordinary pack members could speak directly about their communities. Victoria became one of its strongest supporters, and somewhere between difficult meetings and shared laughter, the two women became unlikely friends. Nathaniel kept walking with Emily every morning he was in the capital. Friendship came first. Trust followed. Love arrived quietly after both had learned that destiny could open a door, but only choice could make two people walk through it together. 1 year later, beneath the same glass ceiling where Emily had once carried a silver tray, there was no choosing ceremony. There were no women waiting to be judged worthy. Nathaniel stood before Emily with the kingdom watching, but he did not command, claim, or choose her. He simply held out his hand. "Emily Carter, will you choose this life with me?" She looked at the servants standing beside nobles, at Mr. Dawson smiling proudly, at Victoria wiping away a happy tear, and finally at the man who had never asked her to become smaller so he could appear greater. Emily placed her hand in his. Yes. The bells of Blackwood rang again, but Emily understood now that destiny had never transformed her from someone worthless into someone worthy. She had always possessed worth. The world had simply needed to remember how to see it. And if Emily and Nathaniel's story reminded you that true strength can be gentle, that dignity belongs to everyone, and that love means choosing each other freely, please like this video, share this story with someone who believes in second chances, and subscribe to the channel for more stories where courage, kindness, and destiny find their way home.